Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're returning. My name's Amanda and I like to get creative, and I want to help you get creative too. Today I'm coloring a little forest scene of a sweet little fox nestled up against the trunk of a tree. I'll be including mushrooms and foliage and one of my favorite icons of the autumn season, a big orange pumpkin. I would love for you to color along with me. I've included a link to the photo reference I'm using, as well as the color palette I created for the color palette challenge I'm hosting over on Patreon. It is open to everyone, including non-members. I also give away a free fairy coloring page every month. So signing up for a free membership will give you a little notification whenever the free coloring page is available. Today I'm using Ohuhu markers from their Honolulu B collection, as well as a few colored pencils, Faber-Castell Polychromos, and maybe a Prismacolor or two. I also try to use a white gel pen at the end, but a small paintbrush with some white gouache would work just as well, or even your acrylic paint markers. Basically, the white gel pen is just going to do some little extra stuff. As you can see, so far I've only gone in with the YR180 or bold pumpkin orange color to start filling in the body and head of our cute little fox friend. For me personally, I'm using a lot of jagged edges because I want him to be fuzzy. You could stylize your fox to be very sleek. It's totally up to you. I just felt like a fuzzy fox today. I should probably also mention that I'm using a new video editing software, and on top of that, I'm really trying to learn how to be a better video editor, and part of that is being a bad video editor. So if this video is, I don't know, less than perfect, I hope you'll forgive me while I'm learning. So now I'm taking in the dark brown marker and just going through and kind of adding some fur on the tips of his ears, some brown fur, adding some shading where his leg comes up, where his head meets his body, and around his tail. This is basically going to be the darkest color we use for our little fox friend today. And now I'm taking the pumpkin orange again and just filling in the little fox's furry body. As you can tell, I'm using small circular strokes. I think that works best to blend the marker in while still kind of creating a little bit of texture. I think my main goal was to just not have streaks in the fox's fur, and it seems to work out, so I recommend it. Now I'm going in to add some little tufts of fur in his ears. And I'm taking the dark brown and starting to color in our pumpkin. I'm just adding the shadows of the bottom of the pumpkin here. The one problem with doing these light lines is I'm not sure how well you can see them on the video. Maybe in the future I'll color darker lines, but I wanted you to see how pretty it is when you do lighten your lines to do your coloring. The no lines coloring was something I learned from the papercraft community when I first started making digital stamps, and I learned to love it. As someone who really likes line art, I think there's a softness about no lines coloring that, I don't know, I certainly appreciate. But it's all a matter of preference. Some things I want lines for, some things I don't. A soft little fox seems like a good idea for a no lines project, but maybe something like a diva singing her favorite song or something with a lot of action in it would be better with lines. At the end of the day, it's personal preference. So now I'm coming through with the pumpkin orange and just filling in the rest of the pumpkin's orange body. That means coloring, starting from the dark shading that I added and pulling in through the middle. I didn't want to do very dramatic lighting on this pumpkin, but you could leave a spot in the middle For highlights, maybe add a yellow or just leave it white for a really shiny pumpkin. Because the pumpkin has sort of a vertical streak in it to begin with, like the natural texture of the pumpkin, I'm not going to do the little tiny lines filling it in. I'm going to do long strokes. And that's kind of how you color most things. You go with the natural grain or texture if you want it to be, semi-realistic. So now we're going to do our mushroom, our biggest mushroom next to the little fox. And I'm coloring that in with a medium brown, sort of like the darkest pumpkin color. Then I'm going over here and coloring in the stem of the pumpkin with that same brown. Now we're going to take the darkest brown and start filling in the big tree trunk behind our little fox friend. We're really using this darker brown to create separation between all these objects. So we'll be going around the fox, we'll be going around the mushroom, and that just helps the objects in the front of the image to appear closer to us. Believe it or not, this is actually sped up just a little bit because I am very slow and I try to be a little precise when I'm doing these no line colorings. So don't feel bad if you feel like it takes you forever to do your coloring. You're coloring for you. It should be relaxing and not something you stress out about. As you get more comfortable coloring, more comfortable with the tool you're using for coloring, you'll go a little faster. I think when I started using markers, it would probably take me 4 to 6 hours to color something, and now it's usually 1.5 to 2 hours. This right here, because it doesn't have a whole lot of details, was maybe 1.5 hours. Although I've broken it down into roughly 40 minutes here. Speaking of me and my video editing skills, what do you think about the little glitch transition? I thought it was kind of cute. I am an older person and I did watch VHS videos as a kid, and I have actually seen them look like that. So finding that transition effect just tickled me a little bit. Will I use it? Will it become a signature transition for this channel? I don't know. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Okay, here I am using a lighter brown to blend in the darker shadows with the rest of the tree trunk. As you can see, I'm doing long up and down strokes to mimic the actual texture of the tree, unlike the little tiny swirls that we did on the fox. I'm taking my time. I'm not rushing because this coloring, while I do plan to share it with you guys, was still mostly for me and my peace of mind. I have had the roughest year probably of my whole life. So I've dug in really deep with being creative just to keep my sanity, just to be able to wake up every day and go to work. I mean, it's been a tough year, and I'll probably make a video about that at some point. But right now, I just want us to get creative and let that side of our brain reign for a little bit. The side that's not as anxiety ridden or depressive. Creating is a way to express emotions, even if it's just coloring a little fox scene. It's soothing and it gives you the feeling of control when there are times in life where you really don't have much control. I've tried to kind of make it my mission to share this coping mechanism with other people by encouraging them to be creative. And that is why I do what I do here on the interwebs. I appreciate you being a part of it. And now I'm going to go in with the lightest brown and just fill in the rest of the tree trunks. Again, I'm using the vertical strokes just to keep with the natural texture of the tree. Do I think you could do little round strokes and get the same thing? Maybe. But as someone who draws, I don't know. My natural inclination is to go with the actual texture of the tree. So it's what I recommend. But at the end of the day, do what you like. Do what makes you happy. And that's whatever texture you want. Keep in mind when you're coloring around your furry fox that you also want to follow the jaggy little fur texture of your foxtail like I did just then. Now I'm going to use the Y121 or the pale yellow to fill in all of the quote unquote white areas or light colored areas, because part of this was giving myself a challenge of only using a certain amount of colors, and that's why I created the color palette for Patreon as well. In a way, a color palette is, in its restriction, actually more liberating, and you end up getting results that you might not have gotten if you were to have access to every single color at your disposal. A fun thing you can try to do is use different color tones for different images. So if you have a forest setting, we're thinking like for this we use autumn colors, maybe we would use icy wintry colors, blues and blue greens and maybe a little yellow, and just see what happens, what kind of atmosphere or emotion that creates. So now we're using the bluish color from the palette to color in the little rock in the grass and to color around the grass and foliage in the background there. Pretty much we're going around everything because this color will be our background color. A nice muted shade of blue for our sky. Very fall-like, I think. Part of using the low saturation blues and greens I chose for this palette was to evoke that autumn feeling where the sun's not so bright anymore. The leaves are starting to change colors. Although I didn't put any orange or brown leaves in this image, mostly because I wanted the fox and the pumpkin and maybe a little bit of the mushrooms to be the center of the image. But you could do this differently. Maybe you want the attention to just be on the fox and you could make the pumpkin a duller shade or even make it a green or white pumpkin. It's totally up to you, and that's what's so much fun about coloring and creating. Light lines make it a lot easier to correct any mistakes you might make. Maybe you forget to outline one of these leaves. Well, you can always add one in another place. It's as difficult as it may seem looking at it, it actually makes it easier to get past any mistakes. One of the great things about working with no lines or very light lines is that you can alter the original image as you're coloring. Maybe you get in there and you decide you want more leaves dangling from the tree. So you just draw in more leaves, or you want a little butterfly. Maybe you want to add some flowers to the grass. This is all stuff you can do when you lighten your lines before you print out your image, or if you use a light pencil to trace the image, which is what I've done here in my sketchbook. I just printed out the digital stamp that I created, or coloring page, and traced it into my sketchbook so I could color it directly in my sketchbook. Using my markers in my sketchbooks is actually kind of new. I've always really used sketchbooks as not so much for finished pieces, just for like thumbnails and stuff like that, but I've really grown to appreciate sketchbook flip throughs and stuff like that on YouTube, and I thought I would like to make some pretty stuff for a future sketchbook flip through. I do have art journals that are really pretty. If you've never done an art journal or gotten into art journaling, I highly recommend it. It is so relaxing because you're not really worrying too much about whether you're using this right, who's going to see it, etc. because your art journal is private. It's just for you, and most of the time, at least in my experience, you end up using a bunch of different medias and you learn a whole lot from it. Personally, I got into art journaling, I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago with a huge year-long lesson collab by a bunch of mixed media artists called Lifebook. I believe Tamara Lepore led that, and I highly recommend it if they're still doing that. And maybe I'll get into it next year because I haven't done one in probably 6 or 7 years, and it was so much fun. Perhaps I'll share my art journals on this channel at some point. Anyway, if you've done art journaling before, let me know in the comments and tell me how you feel about it. For the grass, I'm just doing more circular motions. I think next time I might try to do short, straight, or diagonal strokes just to see if it creates a more grassy-like texture. But the grass isn't really supposed to stand out, so just a flat color works too. Things like the grass or the sky are really just there to hold up our center focus. The fox, maybe the pumpkin, it's all support. And now we're going to go in and color the foliage along the background. It would probably be best to start by tracing around the bigger leaves towards the bottom, just to make sure you don't accidentally color over them. But if you do color over one of your leaves, it's fine. Just find a space somewhere else to create a new leaf that will give you the same balance you had before. Like I said, one of the great things about no lines or light lines coloring is that it leaves you space to fix errors. It gives you room to improvise. And for me, I think it makes it a little more fun. Now, if you're coloring this with lines, you're less likely to miss a leaf, right? So, yeah, whatever you prefer. As I watch myself color in behind these little mushrooms, I do wish I would have made them just a little bit bigger. They kind of feel like an afterthought now, which I guess isn't bad, but wouldn't it have been more interesting if the mushrooms were maybe as tall as the pumpkin? My focus when drawing this scene was really very much on the fox because I don't have a lot of experience drawing foxes. The important thing to remember is that mistakes are never failures because there's always a lesson. I didn't plan ahead on how I wanted to do the edges of this coloring, so I'm just kind of going with a more organic, natural edge, but some washi tape would have made a nice straight edge. Really personal preference. Sometimes I use the washi tape, sometimes I just wing it like I did here. My plan with this yellow on the leaves was to blend it with one of the greens, and thereby the leaves would stand out a little better that way. But unfortunately, the yellow that I chose was kind of the same value as the greens, and I don't think it works out. It does look a little better with the leaves dangling down from the tree. I think it worked out a little better over there, just not so much against the green background, as maybe should have been expected. I'm pretty sure I'm using a lighter yellow on those leaves though, and maybe that helped. Maybe the lighter yellow blended with the green would have looked better on the bush. I think for my next video, I'm going to write a script before I record, or write a script at all. The only thing I scripted for this video was the little intro, and I think it sounds so much better than me rambling like this. I also need to work on my enunciation, so that's something hopefully I will improve with each video. But Thank you so much for watching this much of it. I appreciate it. I'm also using a different microphone. I'm using a lavalier microphone rather than the one sitting on the desk that I've used for all my other videos. And doing this voiceover, I feel like the microphone on my desk might sound better, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna get through editing and have a listen and see. But I apologize if the audio is really bad. It won't be next time. Now we're just going to go in and color in the pumpkin leaves. I love the leaves of the pumpkins. I think they're so pretty and big. I'm just going to use a lighter green and then add some shadows with a darker green. Nothing fancy. This is a color palette challenge after all. Now I'm trying to do that blending I talked about where I lay the green over the yellow just to get maybe a brighter green, but as you can see, it's not working out. The leaves are now just fading into the bush behind them. What a bummer, right? But this is part of the fun. Now we have to figure out how to make these leaves stand out again. But first, I'm going to do this blending bit on the leaves falling from the tree. This one looks a little better because at least it's not green on green. But I do think it would have been nicer if they were lighter or much darker. The values are just too close. I think this would have turned out better if I would have just left the leaves the lighter green and went in the background area and done that all the darker green. I do find a creative way to fix this error later in the video. So keep watching to see how I solve this problem. What do you think of color palette challenges? Do you think that they're fun? Do you find that they help you grow as an artist? What are your favorite kind of challenges? Let me know in the comments below, because what I'm really trying to do here is build a community for creative people. A place where we can all bounce ideas off of each other, learn from each other, and basically be there for one another. I've left most social media. I think YouTube is a social media, but I've left Facebook, I left Instagram, and unfortunately also meant leaving my creative community behind. So I still have Patreon and I'm trying to build this on YouTube, but truly I need all the help I can get. So if you are like me and looking for a sense of community online, hit me up in the comments. I would love to interact. If not on Patreon, maybe on the Discord server I have set up. I don't really know how to use Discord, so I'm not over there a lot, but I would love to find people who want to learn with me or who know and are interested in teaching. Now I'm just coloring in the grass with the darker green. I feel like this pushes the grass away from being a focus, and it's also going to help with the solution I found for those leaves. Just like before, I'm using small circular motions to get the grass completely colored in. And now I'm coloring that foliage in the background with the dark green. And here's where I go in to solve the leaf problem. Instead of having lighter leaves or necessarily darker leaves, I'm letting the leaves have a light edge, and that is how I'm separating. I think this plant would be like a hosta from the foliage behind it. It wasn't what I originally planned. It's just how things worked out as I improvised based on mistakes I've made. And I think it looks pretty cool. I don't hate it, that's for sure. What do you think about it? Instead of drawing the leaf shapes, I'm now kind of filling in the negative space around them. I think that's actually how a lot of people draw. They don't draw with lines, they draw with values, but unfortunately, it's not what came naturally to me. As a little girl, when I first started drawing, I was just mimicking my Barbies and the little princess characters that were in my storybooks, and it never occurred to me to do shadows first. But I do think that's how a lot of people do their artwork, and I'm trying to get better at it. Here I am adding a few more leaves dangling from the tree. Then we're going to go in and add some depth to the pumpkin leaves with a darker green. And what I'm trying to do with the shading here is just to give the petals, the leaves, a little more roundness. And basically that's just shading in the edges. Then I'll go in and add more darkness behind the hosta leaves. I think one of the things I miss so much from not really having a community since leaving social media is first being able to see other people's artwork, especially people who I've watched grow. Now, I have my favorite YouTubers, like we all do, and I love seeing their artwork and supporting them. But that's totally parasocial. It's not like I'm in conversation with folks. I miss having people to bounce ideas off of, although I do have, people in real life, but I don't have a large artist community offline. And the point of all this rambling is that I would love to get feedback from you guys. As long as it's constructive and polite, I will not be offended. With that said, I'm not inviting trolling. So please be respectful to me and to each other. And have fun creating. That's what this is all about. Here you'll see I'm getting a little bolder with this texture. And this is always the scary part because once you bring in the darker colors, it's a little harder to fix things. But I want our little fox friend to have very fluffy fur, so I'm going in and doing sort of a zigzag motion with the marker to get that fuzzy texture, and it works out pretty good, I think. Until this point, I haven't really used the reference a whole lot for coloring because I'm not trying to make the fox super ultra realistic. But in order to get a few details to lend some realism, I'm looking at the reference and seeing where little tufts of dark fur might be on the tips of his ears, around his eyes and nose. I'm just adding a little bit more believability with the darker marker there. After that, I'll use the dark brown marker to start giving more depth to the tree, to the pumpkin stem, anywhere that needs to stand out just a little bit more. Another important thing that I'll do with this dark brown marker is create separation between the objects in the front and the objects in the back. As you see here, I've added some shadow behind the mushroom, a little shadow under the fox's face. Now I'm going in with the dark brown pencil to add more detail to the different objects in the scene. You'll see I'm going in and making more jagged outlines along the edges of the orange fur of the fox. I'm linking his nose and eyes together with the dark brown colored pencil. I believe I'm using Faber-Castell Polychromos for this. I really like the oil-based colored pencils for detail work. They just get sharper and stay sharper longer. And your colored pencils don't have to be the exact color of the marker you're using. Something a little darker, a little less or more saturated works just as well. The important thing is that it's in the same color family, mostly. I mean, it's something you can play with and figure out what you like. Because at the end of the day, it's your style that you're defining by the tools that you use. As you can see, I'm using the same dark brown pencil to go around the orange pumpkin, the brown tree. The point is that orange and brown are in the same family. orange is basically just super saturated brown, or vice versa. But also I could line everything with this dark brown. It would just be a stylistic choice. And it's definitely one I've made before. Where black outlines seem a little harsher, a little more contrasting, using a shade of brown, even a dark brown, creates a softer line. It's a little less jarring, and I think it's really beautiful. I really like when I see even highly saturated colors lined in a shade of brown. I think it makes for a very pretty picture. Line color is really another part of finding your own style. I happen to really like purple too, especially on skin tones, since skin is often pink or yellow based. It just looks so good together. When using the colored pencil though, you want to make sure you keep your tip pretty sharp. It makes it much easier to get the little details that you're going for. You can see here how going around those leaves with the pencil really helped them stand out better. Whereas earlier, even with the lighter edges, they still kind of blended in a bit. But the pencil creates that hard edge that helps them stand out from the foliage behind them. Something that I'm struggling with in DaVinci Resolve is how to get my video footage zoomed in and then keep it there. For some reason, I zoom in so you can like see me tracing these leaves with the colored pencil a little better, and then the next thing I know, DaVinci Resolve just zooms it right back out. I'm still working on it. Hopefully in my next video I will have it figured out, but I apologize if all the zooming everywhere is getting you seasick. That's definitely not the intention here. I'm just a noob at this program that's doing her best, I promise. Here I'm just continuing to outline the little leaves coming down from the tree. And then I'm going to go in and create a little outline of the rock. I'm also making sure to add some different definition to the little pieces of grass and leaves coming up around the rock. Now I'm going to take the second to lightest yellow and go in and add more textured shading to the fox, specifically in his tail here. And you can see I'm using short, straight strokes going in the direction of the tail, so it's kind of diagonal. And I'm just going to go in and add some shading around his mouth area and in his ears. Then I'm just filling in the mushroom because it feels like it's a little too light back there. Okay, now I go in with the gel pen and try to add whiskers. It did not go well, so I just wiped it out, and then I'm going to go in and try to cover it with an orange marker. It doesn't work out so great. It's a good idea to start all of your creations in a sketchbook. That way you can make your mistakes, the majority of them, there before you get onto like a canvas or your expensive watercolor paper or things like that. I love a pretty sketchbook as much as anyone, but you have to be able to have ugliness in your sketchbook too. And I think that's really its goal, like to have a place where you can go and make all your mistakes, learn all your lessons before you take it into the pretty sketchbook. I'm either using a darker orange here or just layering that original orange color. It may not have worked as shadow, but it did add some texture that I like. Now I'm going in and adding some short, darker strokes to the tail, the fur of his tail, just to kind of create a little more texture. I'll also add this along his back and on his leg, just to give him a little bit more fuzziness. That was really kind of the goal. I want him to feel or appear cozy, because he is cozy. He's all snuggled up on a tree branch having a nice little autumn nap. I wish it could be me. Now I'm going to use the white gel pen to just lighten up some of the off-white areas of the fox's fur, his ears, the mushroom skin, and to add a little highlight on the fox's cute little nose. And now I'm going to go in and add my signature. Finally, I have a little peek and decide maybe I want to add some little twinkle stars up in the sky. Just a little extra va-va-boom. And that about wraps up our little fox scene. I wonder what the whimsical art witch thinks of it. Oh, she loves it. If you stayed and watched this long, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Please, if you are interested in seeing this channel grow and watching how I evolve as an artist and a video editor and maybe learn a few tips and tricks along the way, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I hope I see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.